Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today's is a Toyota week. I received my Toyota cylinder head that I've ordered on eBay, and I just want to give you guys a first overview and a little quick look on what we got. This cylinder head was ordered on eBay through a seller called APR Auto. It's kind of funny because they're named APR Auto on their eBay, but then they also have an actual website that they sell these cylinder heads, and on their website they're called Engine Monster. And then you can find them on toyotatruckengine.com. I went on their website and it was actually more expensive to order through their website versus going through their eBay. This cylinder head costed me $624 plus $125 for shipping. And that's because I'm in Alaska. If you weren't in Alaska, it's just flat rate $624, no core charges. Nice thing about this one, when I ordered it, they sent me an email right away saying that, hey, you have to pay $125. I paid them $125. I actually called them over the phone to pay for it, and then they're very knowledgeable. They know that they have to ask you if it's a coil or distributor, because the 3RZ has there's two different kind of 3RZ. The older 3RZ, so they use distributor, and then the 2000 and newer, they use the coil packs. And then there's also the 4-port on the other side for the intake, the 4-port and the 8-port. You guys can search it up if you guys aren't aware of it. So when I spoke with the lady online, she said that the one I'm getting here is a brand new casting, and then the rest of things are refurbished. But overall, it looks really good. Things to keep in mind is that the cylinder head does not come with the studs. So these are the studs from my old one. I went ahead and removed them already. And then all the bolts, I usually put the bolts back into where they go, so I went ahead and transferred all the bolts over. You can see this piece is where the distributor would go if it has one, so it's been plugged up already. And then on mine, since mine's the OEM one, it doesn't have one because this is a coil system. Things you have to keep in mind is that it comes nicely packaged, nice package box, fast shipping too, took less than a week. And then it comes with this right here. You have to put the they call it the service bolt. So when you remove this exhaust cam, you have to put the bolt on here so this thing doesn't come apart. Put it in there, remove it, install the cam, and then remove the bolt. And then also right here, they just have a little note. If you're using a distributor, install the freeze plug and the cam sensor. So for distributor, if you were running a distributor, there's a cam sensor right here. You wouldn't need that, but for me, I do need that because mine's a coil system. So this is where the cam sensor go in. But just some little FYI notes. You can see some of the little grease stuff. That's the grease they use. Casting looks really good. It doesn't come with the 19 mil bolt for the cam gear, so you'll just go ahead and transfer that over. I'll transfer that over, and then this is the engine tow hook, the engine hook right here. Transfer that over. One thing you want to keep in mind is that when you lay down your cylinder head, you want to make sure you lay it down on something that's smooth. So you guys don't worry, I have newspaper and some cardboard set down already, so you're not going to damage or scratch the bottom of the head. But let me show you guys the bottom here if you guys can see it. All the valves looks really good. The intake valve, exhaust valve. I checked the bottom for any cracks, and everything looks super solid. Once I go in and install this cylinder head, I'll go ahead and wipe down the surface area with acetone. I did a little bit of acetone already on the exhaust one, but once it's in the engine, we'll go over again and go and use a cloth with my acetone and just wipe it down. Acetone is basically like a little nice heavy-duty brake cleaner system. It doesn't come with the half moons, so we'll go ahead and transfer those over. These are the metal ones. I also went and ordered the kit already, the valve cover kit. They come with the rubber ones, so I'll save the rubbers for backup, and then we'll put the spark plug tubes and gasket on. I was debating if I wanted to paint my valve cover. It's been pressure washed and degreased already, but I'm just gonna leave it the way it is. The other thing I haven't put on yet is the intake one, the intake studs. There's only 2 studs for the intake side, and then the rest of it's bolts. And then also the fuel injector cups. I'll show you guys how to install that in a bit here. And then also they come with the spark plug tubes. These are the spark plug tubes you can see right here. So the reason why they didn't install these, because I guess the height of it is a bit taller for shipping, so it comes uninstalled. And what you do is I watched a video on how to do this. You want to make sure you have it nicely cleaned up. So I'm gonna use some acetone brake cleaner, clean this up, clean the inside of this right here, and then at the end of this right here, I'm gonna put a little bit of black RTV, some black RT right here. This is what I like to use. So put a little bit of black RTV, and then you go ahead and set it down, and then get a piece of wood, a 2x4, and then you'll go ahead and hammer it in. So once it hammered in, it should be very low, about this size right here. You can see right there, about 1 inch right here. So you can see right now it's about 2 inches out. So you want to make sure you set this in really good. And once it's in there, it's good. So we'll go ahead and do this in a bit. This one's different because one of them was kind of bad. This exhaust stud was kind of stripped at the end of it, and I didn't want to use it, so I had some backup ones. So we're going to use this one instead, and then the rest of it's OEM. You have 6 studs for the exhaust. I went ahead and ordered some exhaust nuts. Keep in mind, the exhaust nuts, I said it once and I'll say it again, these guys are one-time use. They are self-locking. You can see how they're kind of oval. Once you thread them in, they open up and they tighten up. So make sure you have these. You need 6 for the exhaust manifold and then 3 for the downpipe. This is 10 for backup. To remove these guys, you can use the double nut method, but I got tired of doing that, so I went and ordered the E10. This is an E10 torque, and you can see right here, I removed it with the gun. So I shot it with the gun, and then I went ahead and tightened that back in with the impact. And then also I went ahead and did the EGR delete. I'll save that for another video. We'll talk about that in a bit. But then I want to show you guys what else I ordered. So most of the stuff I ordered was on eBay, through Amazon, through Rock Auto, and LCE Engineering for the EGR block off, and also LCE for the fuel injector cups. And then everything else is from Rock Auto. It was much cheaper to go through Rock Auto versus going through AutoZone. So these are the throttle body gasket. These guys were like $2 a piece, so I decided to order 2 for backup. Dot 3 fluid, we're gonna go ahead and flush the brake system. Well, flush the brake system and the clutch fluid. Marble Mystery. Once we have this engine installed, we're gonna dump the oil out, put new oil, put Marble Mystery, and then we're gonna go ahead and drain the oil after 500 miles. Went ahead and got a new thermostat, ASIN, part number right here. We'll go ahead and put a new thermostat. This is a fuel filter. We're gonna go ahead and install the fuel filter, a new fuel filter, because it's super hard to get to, and right now we have access to it. And then you need a lot of brake cleaner. For oil, I run 530. That's what they call for. 3RZ 3.4, they call for 530. I like using just the Super Tech Walmart brand, cheap one, synthetic 530. And then for the coolant, I usually use the ASIN red coolant from O'Reilly's, but then I found out that since this is my off-road rig, it's better to just use regular green coolant. And the reason is that, let's say if you're off-roading and you're in a small town and you need coolant, well, the chance of you finding red coolant is very hard versus finding green coolant. So I wanted to use something that's very generic for my off-road rig, and it'll be fine. These engines are pretty tough, so any kind of coolant should be fine. On my 3.4, I run the Xerox pink coolant, which is the good stuff. But for my off-road rig, I'm just gonna run this stuff here, and I'll go ahead and flush them out every year or so. I also went ahead and removed the radiator because the radiator was super dirty with mud and silt from Jim Creek and stuff like that. So I went ahead and washed that up, and then we'll go ahead and reinstall this. This right here is the valve cover gasket. Comes with the spark plug tube gasket, the 2 half moon, these little guys, 10 of those for the valve cover bolts, and then the valve cover gasket itself. We'll go ahead and install this in a bit here. We're gonna go ahead and install the spark plug tube gaskets. And then this right here is the Toyota OEM gasket. You always want to go with OEM, preferably. This is the Toyota part number. Here's the old one right here. Very nice and dirty. Nothing was wrong with the old one. The old one was fine. There was no head gasket leak on this engine. We just had a bad burnt valve. But with head gasket, you never reuse them. Always want to use a new one. I also went ahead and ordered new belts, new alternator belt, new AC belt, and then also a new power steering belt. We'll install that last. And this right here is the fuel filter. You can see how it's located right here in these 2 bolts. And then you have the intake manifold that comes like this. So if you were to redo your fuel filter with everything on, it's super hard to. So it's much more easier to do it while everything's off. And it's just good insurance. This vehicle has 240,000 miles or so. So we're gonna go ahead and swap that out. Keep in mind that the fuel filter that I bought, it doesn't come with this bracket right here. So you wanna reuse this bracket. Here's the fuel injector cups. These are from LCE Engineering. When I was installing my new injectors, when I was troubleshooting this, I went and installed new ones already. But then in order to remove them, you'll most likely damage it. So you have to order a new one. These guys are $20 for a set of 4. I also went ahead and installed a new spark plug when I was troubleshooting the whole misfire. So I'm going to keep those for spare, and then I'm going to install these as a new one. This is the part number for the 3RZ 2526 NGK. All this was ordered from, these guys were ordered from Rock Auto, like under $2 a piece. We're also going to install new head bolts because they call for new head bolts. These head bolts are from LCE Engineering. That's the part number. It says made in China, but should be good. One thing you want to keep in mind is that I just saw somebody on the forum posted that they installed their head, they just did a head gasket and they forgot to install the washers. So make sure when you install these guys, you put the washer on. You want to make sure it's nice and clean. Put a little bit of oil, and put a little bit of oil up here too, and then install these. I'll talk about this later on as far as torque specs and how to do it. I also went ahead and bought this guy. This is a gauge. This is an angle gauge because once you torque your head bolts, they want you to torque it another 90 degree. So we're gonna use this as our guide. And then these guys right here are from O'Reilly's. You can get it from O'Reilly's or AutoZone. That's the part number. You need 2 of these guys. Part number 99616. These are the 2 gasket for the downpipe on the 3RZ. So make sure you guys get these. These are like $5 a piece. And then also went ahead and got the Felpro. This is the Felpro intake gasket for the manifold. There's 2 pieces. And then this right here is the Felpro gasket for the exhaust. So this is the exhaust manifold gasket. That's the part number. Intake manifold. That's the part number 92672. This is what the exhaust manifold gasket looks like. All of this right here was ordered through Rock Auto for super cheap. This was their clearance warehouse products, so it was very cheap, like less than $5 a piece. If I would have went through AutoZone, these guys would have been retail for like $20 a piece or something like that. So highly recommend Rock Auto. I just started ordering parts through them, and man, I've been super impressed with their shipping and their prices. So definitely highly recommend them. This is the intake manifold gasket for the 3RZ. Keep in mind that the older 3RZ, they have an 8-port. So you'll have like a 2, this will be 2-port. There'll be like a separation right here. And they call this the 8-port. And then on the new one, the 2000 up 3RZ, this is a 4-port. So you got to make sure when you buy the gasket, you have the 4-port or the 8-port. And for me, I had the 4-port. So just something to keep in mind. And these are the metal ones. Here's the new fuel pump. I took out the old one and then I drained the rest of the gas that was inside of it, and it was pretty dirty. It was very milky, or it looks very sand, and looks like there was dirt inside of it. So I'm glad that we're changing out the fuel pump. So we're gonna change the fuel pump, the fuel filter. You do want to use the bracket. This is the bracket, the black piece right here. Reuse that. It's a 10 mil, and then bolt that back on. This is the orientation, not this way. So fuel goes in and it comes out here to the fuel rails, to the injectors. And these are the bolts. The fuel pump came with the fuel filter came with new washers, so we'll go ahead and use some of the washers that's in here. Here are the fuel injector cup for the 3RZ motor. They go in like this, and it's really hard to get them in. You can see how tight they are. It does have a little rubber gasket right there. So one little technique I found out is that if you use a 11 mil, use the 11 mil socket, and what you want is you want it to drive in all the way in like that. So you can see inside there's a little ridge. You don't want to be on that ridge. You want to be way down here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna use that, and then we're gonna drive it in like that, and that's how you get the fuel injector cup in. You want to make sure it's nice and clean. We clean it up already, and then we're gonna go ahead and put it in gasoline. A little bit of gasoline like that, just right on the O-ring. That's usually where you want it. You don't want to smack it on the top right here. On the top right here, it's gonna crack, so you don't ever want to hit it on the top. You want to go all the way into the cup. Slowly tap it. Number 4 right here, the fourth injector cup, all the way at the end of the engine, at the back of the engine. It's very hard to get to when the cylinder head's in the vehicle. So luckily, I have the cylinder head off. I got these spark plug tubes clean, like RTV on here. So we're gonna go put some RTV on it. It's very nice to be working on a 4-cylinder. That's a nice thing about 4-bangers, man. It's so easy to work on and less parts too. Yeah, this stuff right here is called the Right Stuff 90-minute gasket maker. Highly recommend it, guys. Amazing stuff. I use this stuff when I'm in a rush, and I use gray RTV, typical gray RTV. Next thing we're doing is we have this top dead center. Both for the exhaust cam and the intake cam are top dead center. These little dowel pins right here, they have to be pointed up. And then also you can check behind here. There's 2 dots on the exhaust cam and 1 dot on the intake, and they line up right there. Not sure if you guys can see it. On the back of the exhaust cam, there's a bolt right here. There's a threaded hole, and you have to put a bolt in there to keep this two pieces together. You can see this gear here is a 2-piece, and if you don't do that, this thing's gonna, like, the tension's gonna come apart. So this is a N6 bolt. Same bolt size and thread as the bolts for the valve cover. A lot of people use the valve cover bolts, but I have a dedicated bolt for this. So this exhaust gear is kind of weird because this bolt's supposed to go through this gear and the second gear, but there's no hole on this side. This hole here doesn't go through, and the hole that's threaded doesn't line up with this piece here. So I think they have this misaligned. So hopefully when we take this off, nothing happens. On the back of the engine, you have this little water housing thingy. It has a metal gasket originally, but I'm not sure if I'm going to reuse this, so I'm going to install this with some black RTV. It goes on the back of it like that with 3 screws, 3 bolts. Once this is in the engine, it's super hard to get to. Black RTV, man, guaranteed to not leak, man. That's why I love it. This sensor stays on the passenger side, so you can't mix it up or anything like that. Yeah, this piece here is hard to get to once it's in there, so it's always good to have this installed now. There's a block off plate that they sell for this section here. You can block it off, but I don't know what you would do with the hoses, where it goes to, where it originally goes to. All right, so that's in. Looks good. This is the top hose for the radiator. So it goes in that way. It goes in this way because it has a sensor on top. So it has a gasket too, but we're gonna go ahead and put RTV on it. So it goes right here, and we're gonna install this right now. This stuff here cures in 90 minutes, but we're not going to install this cylinder head till tomorrow. So once we have everything buttoned up, this thing will be ready to rock and roll just in time. This right here down here, this is where the cam chain tensioner goes to. We'll go ahead and install that once we have everything buttoned up. That goes last. So now that's all done. We have everything done right now. What we have to do now is we're going to have to remove the cam and the intake exhaust, because in order to bolt this down, you have to remove this so you can get to the hose for the head bolts. So we're gonna have to remove this, and then you have to remove this in a very particular way. There's a particular order how to remove this so you don't mess it up. So we'll go ahead and do that. I just finished cleaning the block. Clean all the threads out, wiped it down. Once we're ready, we'll go ahead and wipe it down one more time with acetone. But right now I have the new cylinder head with all the cam's exhaust removed, the exhaust and intake removed. Make sure you have all your caps labeled. They go in particular order. You can't just switch them around. These are all intake, front, last, exhaust, and the intake front from last to front. One thing I went ahead and did was, while this was removed, I went ahead and removed the cups. And you also just remove them, check them out. So I checked both. I removed all of them and just checked them out and make sure they're clean and stuff. I found some where it had like styrofoam from the packaging inside of the cup, so just make sure you clean that out, but nothing too crazy. But just make sure you do one at a time and don't mix them up, because these are the shims made for each valve. So this is the exhaust side, and then this is the intake side. So just doing one last inspection, and then we'll get it going and get it installed. I'll go ahead and flip it over on this I'll flip it on the bottom soon, and then we'll go ahead and wipe down the bottom of the cylinder head. Make sure it's nice and clean. Go ahead, I'm gonna go and wash my hands, make sure my hands are clean, put on some nice clean gloves, and we'll start the head gasket install. Today's the big day. We're gonna go ahead and install the cylinder head and put this engine back together. I cleaned the cylinder head yesterday already, but I'm gonna go ahead and do one more wipe down. Make sure we have our clean gloves. Clean the head bolts already. The hose for the head bolts. So make sure you give it a nice little wipe down, and then we'll go ahead and apply the head gasket. One of the hard things that's gonna be a challenge for me is going to put the cylinder head, because the timing chain right here, you have to slip this up into the cylinder head. So it's usually easier if you have two-person, but it's just me today, so I'll try to see if I can do it by myself. Make sure you clean the timing cover too. Next thing we have is the OM head gasket. Beautiful head gasket. I got this on eBay from a dealer for $112 ship, so really good price. Make sure it's nice and clean too. So the hard thing about this is that this has to slip over the timing gear. For the head gasket, it's easy because you can slip it over, but you gotta be careful when you do the cylinder head. So you can see that right there. It's gonna be hard doing that to the cylinder head. I do have the sprocket zip tied to the chain, so it won't fall off or anything like that. Head gasket's on. Make sure you have it on the correct side. It only goes in one way, and then make sure it's fully aligned up with the dowel pins. The thing about the timing chain is that if I drop it, I don't know if the bottom of the gear is gonna get loose or anything like that. So you can see how I let it go. If I let it go, it's gonna sit like that. So I think this will be fine. So I'm gonna have to remove this. If it sits like this, I'll be fine. And I have to be very careful lifting that cylinder head in here. So we'll see if I can do that all by myself. This right here is the hard part. We'll see if I can get it in one shot. It's very, very heavy. So, it's very awkward too. Hold on. So I got my foot inside the frame, and I'm gonna try to do this in one motion. It's very, very scary. All right. Let's see. Very careful. It's the wire harness on the back. It's caught up on something. It's the back piece. I knew the back was gonna get caught up. Let's lift it up and do it one more time. Yeah, so this harness here, I'm gonna have to tie this harness up so it doesn't mess around with us. I had a feeling this harness was gonna get in the way. Let me tie this up real quick. There's some bolts that I put in the back of it for the little, this piece here. I'm gonna take these bolts off because I think these were getting caught up on it too. So make sure you take all these bolts off in the back. Take two. Shoot, it's so awkward. Alright. Alright, it's in, guys. This head is finally on. Yeah, you have to freaking move this freaking wire harness, man. So make sure it's in the dowel pin. And we'll go ahead and tie this back up. I'm gonna get out of this engine bay and recheck it real quick, and then we'll go for the bolts. Yeah, make sure it's in the pin. Once it's in the pin, you shouldn't be able to move it, slide it around or anything. I have the new head bolts You want to oil them up a little bit, lube them up with just regular motor oil, a little bit on the threads and a little bit on the head. Put a light coat, and then we're gonna go ahead and pre-install all the bolts. So we're gonna loosely tighten them first. We're gonna hand tighten them, and then we'll go in the correct sequence where we torque them to 29 foot-pound, and then we'll go back and do a 90-degree, turn them another 90-degree, and then after that do another 90-degree. So there's 3 steps to doing this. So all the bolts gonna get torqued 3 times. So I'm not gonna show you guys all of it, but you guys know the point. Make sure you get yourself a book. I'm using the Haynes manual, and that's the torque sequence right there. You start with the number 1 in the middle, which is the passenger, and then you go in a crisscross pattern. So we're gonna follow this pattern. This is a very, very crucial part, so you want to take your time doing it. So I'm not gonna film this. This is gonna take at least 30 minutes because I'm gonna take my sweet time. Once we're done with this, we'll go ahead and reinstall the cam gears, the camshaft, intake and exhaust, and then torque those down. And then after that, we can go ahead and get the timing chain tensioner on, and then slap on the manifold, intake, and go from there. We're just hand tightening them right now, so it doesn't matter what sequence you go in. Just go ahead and hand tighten them first, and then we'll bring up the torque wrench. The 2 most difficult head bolts to get to are the 2 in the back. For these 2, you have to remove the heater hose. You can't see it right here. And then you also have to remove the heater control valve. You just have to loosen it so you can get your socket between it, like behind, like that. But other than that, that's the only thing that's just hard to reach. It's easier if the engine was off of the truck, but it's doable. I have all the head bolts installed. We went with 29 foot-pound, and then another 90-degree with the gauge, the torque, the angle gauge, and then another 90-degree. It's pretty dang tight in there. We also went ahead and torqued the 2 timing belt. There's 2 bolts right here that goes from the head to the timing belt cover. Those are 15 foot-pound. If you have the coil system like mine, you have a cam sensor right here. So make sure you install this, because in order to remove the head bolts, this has to come off. So this was removed prior to the install. So make sure you install that. Next thing we're gonna do is go ahead and install the intake and the cam, the exhaust cam. So fun stuff, we're almost there. I just ran into my first little mistake, nothing too crazy. The sprocket bolt for the intake cam right here, this big one, 19mm, I left it on, and now I can't remove it out because this gear is blocking it. So I have to remove the cans back out, remove this bolt, and then install them back in. So make sure when you're doing this, make sure you don't have this 19 bolt in. I had a feeling when I was installing this, like, man, should I take this off or not? And kind of skipped right past me, so there's not enough room for this to back out enough. So I'm gonna have to remove this, take these back off. So nothing too crazy. Quick update, everyone. I got the cylinder head installed. I got the cams installed. I did went ahead and snap one of the bolts for the cam caps, so I went ahead and took that off and I put a new one. I used one of the bolts from my old head, but it was pretty scary, but it was nothing crazy. Didn't strip the head or anything. So we had that on. We had the sprocket back on, the cam chain tensioner back on. Once you have the cam chain tensioner back on, you want to go ahead and crank the crankshaft. You want to crank it, turn it 2 rotations, and just make sure you don't hear anything funky. If you hear something funking, like something clicking or metal clacking, then something's wrong. But everything was good. I turned it about 2, 3, 4 rotations, and then also checked the top dead center, everything line backed up. Went ahead and put a little bit of oil in here, and then went ahead and installed the spark plugs. New spark plugs are inside. Went ahead and installed the power steering bracket right here. This is the power steering adjuster bracket, and then I'm installing the power steering bracket over here. And we're gonna go and wrap it up pretty soon. We have a few more things to button up. The engine is fully back and assembled. Just got done putting fresh oil. I also filled it up with 1 gallon of coolant already. I'll go ahead and fill up the rest of it. It should take about 2 gallons once it's done processing through the whole system. So I'm gonna top it off right here and then let it bleed out. So you wanna go ahead and do a quick double check. Double check all your work. Make sure you didn't lose any ground. All the nuts and bolts. Everything's tight in there. I went and put 1 quart of Marble Mystery, and then about 4.5 quarts of 5W30. I want to run this for about 500 miles, let it get all the junk out if there's any more junk, and then we'll go ahead and put fresh oil after that, or new fresh oil. So everything looks good. EGR deleted. This hose here needs to be on the radiator shroud. I got rid of the shroud because I didn't want the shroud just gets in the way. So I got a new hose. I was gonna do a hose, a fuel return. This is the fuel return line from the regulator. I was gonna do a new line from here to just where the hard line is, but I decided just to keep it the way it is. And everything's back together. I kept the battery on a trickle charger for the last couple of days because it hasn't been running, so the battery's good. Here we go, first start. $262,534 miles for the wrecker, for the top end rebuild, new cylinder head, all gaskets, everything like that. We're in neutral. Clutch in. Holy smoke! You guys see how it is? It doesn't shake. It doesn't shake how it used to be. We're gonna bleed the system out, so we're gonna put it on hot. No more check engine light. Whoa! Guys, this engine sounds super quiet compared to how it was last time. Let's get out there and check for leaks and finish the coolant bleed process. I think we fixed it, guys. We fixed the misfire. I think we did it, yes! It's smoking from the back. I think that's just the gasket stuff. Yeah, that smoke right there is just from the downpipe gasket, so nothing to worry about. I'm a little bit worried. The engine is not shaking like how it is, but you can hear it's a little bit rattling. I forgot to check the valve clearance when I had everything apart, but that's not a big deal. We'll let it run for a little bit, and I can always open up the valve cover again and check the valve clearance. So hopefully it's just the valve clearance that's knocking. Yeah, it sounds like the valves or something is ticking up there on the top. It doesn't sound good though. It doesn't sound good, but it doesn't sound too bad.